name's Irv Silverman. I feel like in all due respect, the junior senior here today, so I may have a little less to say, hopefully. What I want to talk about is a little bit of my history, the farm history of Silverman's, so we can parallel it the best I can to what I can remember as the kind of history of Easton as I see it. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. The oldest sibling is my brother, and I am the youngest. Harold is 14 and a half years older than me, and my mom always said she'd never stop changing diapers for 16 years, and they weren't disposable. My dad grew up in New York City with just his mother. When he was very young, 14 or 15, he got ran over by a horse and buggy. He was in the hospital for a long time, and the doctors wanted to amputate his leg, and my grandmother said, no way. A year later, he was walking as well as you and I. But he didn't like the city after that. He left his mom there for a while, and he moved to Bridgeport. He started working on cow farms. He used to tell me these stories for $1 a day. And the farmer would say, the horses don't stop. You run ahead of them, open the door. When they go out, you run back and you close it. But of course, milk was 5 cents, bread was 3 cents, so I guess he managed. This was in the early 20s, and of course, there was a war effort going on. Besides working on the cow farms, he got a job at Remington Arms. He became very valuable because he was very wiry and very fast, and they wanted to keep him so he didn't go into the First World War, which I was very happy about. He was able to save some money and able to buy his first piece of land in Easton. However, there was prejudices in those days, just like there is unfortunately today, but they wouldn't sell to a Jew, the realtors. My wife told me not to say this, but I'm saying it. So he got someone to buy it for him, and for a commission, they sold it back to him. So that's how he got his first piece of land in Easton. Then,
What year was that?
in the 20s, early 20s.
For John Candy.
So then he wanted to build a cider mill. This is very interesting. Somehow he got credit, and on Banks Road, it's not there anymore. It was a huge cider mill. It was not only Depression time, but it was Prohibition time. Trucks would line up on Saturday when I was about this big. Everybody had big yards, and everybody had trees. So they'd bring their 50-gallon barrels and their truckload of apples, and he would crush them, or press them as we call it, for about $5 a barrel. At the same time, my wife also told me not to tell this story, but he would deliver cider to what he called the speakeasies in Bridgeport. But it was sweet cider, very legal. 2 or 3 weeks later, it was hard cider. And he would go down, I guess, with horse and buggies at night or whatever and deliver. And that helped him get his business going, because wanting to be a farm doesn't happen overnight. He eventually bought more land, but the whole hill where we are now was what I call a forest. There's no chainsaws, there's no big bulldozers. If there were, sure as heck he couldn't afford them. Everything was cleared by hand with saws. If anybody ever remembers those, I used to call them wheelless wheelbarrows. They had a scoop in the front and 2 handles, and the horses would pull them. And that's how he cleared the terraces after he pulled the trees down. So he would plant an acre as he cleared it, and as the farm grew, he grew what I call into a truck farm. I don't think anybody uses that expression today, but a truck farm is a farm that raises everything. You know, from lettuce, scallions, strawberries, tomatoes, apples, peaches, you name it. You don't do what you do today and specialize. So that's how he started to build the farm. But I'm going to have to regress now He met my mother, who worked in Bridgeport, just when he started the cider mill. And as I said, I'm one of the youngest of 8 kids. And she'd always tell me the story when she met him. And he proposed, his heritage was from England, and she thought he was a cold Englishman. 8 kids later, she never said that again. So, anyway, he's getting married, so he had to build a house. At the same time, Hemlock Reservoir was being developed by the Bridgeport Hydraulic Company. I don't know if that's what it was called in those days. And they were selling houses for, and I don't remember, $50 or $100 a house. If you take them down, take them apart, and get them out of there. Well, he did that, and the house we all grew up in, right next to the market, basically are homes that came out of the Easton Reservoir, which I think is interesting. Anyway, now I'm going to have to look at my notes. So, also, you know, starting a farmhouse, it doesn't happen overnight, so he had to get apples to press cider, to sell to the speakeasies, etc. So there was 2 big orchards in Easton, and one was Slady's, and the other one was Sam Senior. People might have heard of Seniors, but that was where today Morning Glory and Rosewood and Westwood Drive area is. That used to be a big orchard. So he would buy apples from them and Slady's, and then he would press that at his mill. And again, am I going to regress? He brought his mother in before he got married, and he just had this mill before he built a house or anything. On the mill, which I remember, but not going back that clear, there was 2 rooms. One was where his mother lived for the first few years with a coal stove. The other didn't have heat in it. And of course, in those days, a lot of people had outhouses. So that's how he got started. And then once he got the house done, then he got married. He lost his mother just before it was done and proceeded to have 8 children. So I don't forget my place here. Just a little history that I remember too is when we wanted to go to Bridgeport, and I remember going to Hebrew school on a bus, there was a CRNO bus line which went from Greiser's store to Helzak's store. I think there's 1 or 2 stops going down. Went down all the way. I'd get off at Fairfield Avenue and go all the way down State Street to Main Street, Bridgeport. You think of the good old days. Well, Mom let us kids go down to Los Poli Majestic Theater to go to a movie. She didn't worry about getting clubbed or getting robbed or anything. It was a very safe time, and we enjoyed it. You know, it's like today, you know, you can't leave your kid without turning your back. So when you say the good old days, a lot of it was the good old days. Really, really enjoyed those memories. Another funny story is the Easton Firehouse. A lot of people that haven't been here for years don't remember this, but back in the 40s and early 50s, there were phones, but there was no plectrons, no cell phones, and it was all volunteer firemen. My dad was one, so I was a little active when I was young with running the fires with him. But how'd you know where the fire was? Well, there's a big horn on top, which would go off to test 8 in the morning and 6 at night. So we knew it was working. If you lived next door, you were used to it. If you had company, it scared the living hell out of you. It was like the Queen Mary in your backyard, you know. But everybody had a code book. So the horn would go off, and let's say it was the code and do it 3 times. So I'll use the code 3, 2, 1, and go boop, 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 boop. People would hear it, they'd go outside, get their book, look up 3, 2, 1, and it might say Banks Road. Well, they knew what road it was on anyway, and they would get in the cars and run and help with the fire. And basically that's how the Easton Volunteer Fire Company worked in those days. It's very, very interesting. As we grew up, of course the schools were small, we're not going back too far, but Staples School I went from kindergarten to 9th grade. Nobody goes to school 10 years in one school unless they stay back. So that's a long time. Then I went to Bassick, which all my sisters did, for 1 year, and then Barlow opened up in 1959. The Easton directory, the history says it opened up from 7th to 12th. Well, it opened up from 7th to 11th because we started as a junior year at Barlow. The first graduating class was the next year, which I was in, so I was the first graduating class. And we're having a reunion in a couple weeks, which should be very interesting. And then as far as myself is concerned, then I went on to the University of Bridgeport because that's the only place I could go on to school and still work on the farm. But all my sisters helped. Everybody in those days, of course, had big families to help out on farms. So, you know, we weren't any different. The girls mostly would be, you know, helping, doing planting in the greenhouse or picking strawberries or working in the market. And it was, you know, nice because it's part of your heritage. She can tell their kids and my kids how we grew up and what we did. And, it was very, very good memories. Just would talk about a little bit quickly, take up any more time, how I think times have changed and almost come full circle. In those days, and I have a picture over here of the roadside stand. This is just before I was born. Everybody came up from the towns to buy at farms bushels of lettuce, bushels of cabbage, whatever, and they froze and canned everything. There were no super Stop and Shops. There were no box stores. As people moved out of the country, the box stores emerged, and everything was there. The farms sold to the big box stores. And now, of course, everybody buys 2 pounds of tomatoes and 3 pounds of this and 2 pounds of that. Nobody buys by the bushel anymore. In that picture, everything almost is by bushels. But again, because everybody moved away from the farms, the next generation never grew up like we did. So now of course, Silverman's has changed into more of what I call an agritourism business. Because people come up and say, when I was a kid, these were the farms. And these kids have never seen, especially inner city kids. So they get on a tractor, which they never had. They go up and they pick fruit off a tree, which they always thought grew in super Stop and Shop. They pick one, they eat one. They see what it's like. And of course, then mom and dad, when it's a full circle, then they have to pick them and show them that they can make a pie. You know, so we're back to full circle again, and they do some canning and freezing. I hear more about it now. The kids haven't seen animals, a cow, a sheep, a goat. They go to the animal farm, they see it, and unfortunately that's because they've all moved away, and these young kids only see what they see on TV. So our farm, and I've tried to parallel this with how Easton has changed too, has become more of a place for learning. And children really, if you were ever there on the weekend, see these little kids wanting to get on a tractor, wanting to pick a peach or an apple or see an animal. It really has made my life a lot of fun. And I've probably forgotten a few things, but thank you very much. It was a lot of fun talking to you.